Hi, this is Delia Olmos-Garcia, South Salem High School, class of 2010.
Let's get started.
Today we're joined by 2010 graduate Delia Olmos-Garcia. Delia's years at the Saxon included involvement in our orchestra, choir, our Japanese Honor Society, the IB program, the literary magazine. She was the first in her family to attend and graduate college. She earned her master's in business administration, and now she serves as the executive director at Willamette Academy. She loves to box, she loves to read, she loves to visit lighthouses and coffee shops. Can't wait to hear more about all of that. Welcome, Delia.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's really awesome that we're showcasing different alums.
It's been such a joy to get to know some students that I had known and some that I didn't. And you fall into that latter category. So can't wait to hear more about your story. What has life been like for the last, several years since you graduated?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been that long. I think if you would have asked me in 2010 what those 14 years would look like, I think most of it's in alignment, to be honest. My goal was to go to college. I did that. I actually ended up working at a nonprofit after college doing immigrant rights advocacy, which was pretty fitting. And I think I found a lot of growth there professionally. And then I had to come back to Willamette Academy once I heard there was an opening. I was part of Willamette Academy, and so it was cool to be able to work full time in a place that had provided a lot of resources and information for me to go to college. So it's awesome to give back in that sense and be able to relate to students as well, but also stay up to date, right, with all the lingo and all the changes and just understanding students within their context now. So yeah, I think academically, I have met those goals on a personal level. As you mentioned, I just want to have hobbies and make Salem a place that I can continue call home.
Well, we love that. Thank you for that partnership through all the years, especially with your involvement in Willamette Academy. For those who aren't familiar, what is the Willamette Academy? How do you serve students? What's the connection between you as a student in the program now as the executive director? Talk about it all.
Yeah, so Willamette Academy is a college access program that serves 8th through 12th graders in Salem Kaiser. So it's a really unique program. Many of you might be familiar with Avid. Similar, premise. We're trying to support students in their pursuit of higher education. I would say what makes us unique, though, is that we are located at Willamette University and we have a partnership there. So students apply seventh grade. We only have 32 spots, so those 32 students come across the different middle schools in Salem Kaiser. And once they're in the program for 5 years. We provide them with mentors, tutors, sessions on Saturdays, parent workshops, college visits, right? And then probably the most favorite aspect for students is the summer program. So they get to stay on campus as they get older, experience dorms. We're lucky, right, to be on campus, so professors volunteer their time and teach classes and anything ranging from environmental science, computer programming, or simply just walking around campus and looking at the different critters and learning a little bit more about their ecosystems. So I would say it's a wraparound program. And then for those who are eligible and are admitted to Willamette University, because they are Academy students, Willamette University meets their full need. So that's really awesome, right, for students to not have to worry financially, and having a university like Willamette as a backup is a good deal.
Oh, absolutely. And I would imagine, gosh, seventh grade, this day and age, one of the hardest things we struggle with as educators is creating initiative, creating that intrinsic motivation within students, connecting their learning to their future and the goal orientation that you mentioned. I'm curious for you, where did that come from, especially as a student who was their first in the family to attend and graduate college? Was this something that your family was pushing on you? Was it something that you just knew, like, hey, I am driven to do this? Talk about that for you as a young seventh grader, and then how it translates now into your work.
Yeah, I would say that I've always had an element of nerdiness and some introversion that I think kind of aligns into education. But Both of my parents were immigrants from Mexico. My mom actually taught kindergarten in Mexico. So once they immigrated and had myself and my two siblings, I think she just naturally, put education at the forefront and my dad supporting as well. Even during summers, my mom would ask teachers before we were let off for break, like, do you have any assignments that my kids could do over the summer? And she would make us go to the library and get books and participate in like reading activities. So there was always something to do at home. We actually even had a closet full of crafts, and my mom would just say, have at it. So I feel very lucky to have had that growing up. And I think as I get older, I obviously am more thankful for the sacrifices because I know that as undocumented immigrants, like resources weren't always at hand, but they always made it a priority to have those materials. Or if I had a project, it'd be like, let's prioritize the supplies you need for this project. Sometimes it was all hands on deck. I remember a project in fifth grade. The whole family was like painting with me just to make sure that I got it in on time. So a lot of it comes from my parents, and I would say that they understood the value of education in terms of like mobility and being new to this country and understanding that, if you want to apply to a specific level of jobs, you're going to have to get an education. I think the challenge for them was not knowing what those steps were going to be. So, in terms of like mentors and access to resources, I think they encouraged us to find those mentors at school. And then later on for me, it became Willamette Academy and being able to ask what that process would look like and have more one-on-one guidance. So I really do think it started at home and then they did what they could. And they're like, just plug in with people who know more than we do.
I love that. What a gift that was for you, and what a gift you're now giving to students as they enter into Willamette Academy and providing them with those resources and that mentorship and that pathway, though it will look different for every student, to capitalize on what you can provide too and what you can offer. You mentioned that as something just paying back, investing in a community. And as a recipient of those students that are coming through and walking our hallways and engaging in our curriculum, and just thank you on behalf of everybody here at South, especially. We see the product of all that you're doing as well, and it sounds like that's just a flow through what you were gifted to from your own family.
Thank you.
Yeah, what was the reaction from your family, your parents especially, after you graduated from college, oh, high school, and then college, and then to get a master's and an MBA? That's significant. Talk about that, what the pride, their joy that they saw in that moment.
Yeah, well, I am the oldest daughter, so I
Oh,
think in a lot of ways it was expected and lead by example for my younger siblings. High school was definitely a celebration, but not in comparison to college. And they really saw me navigate the new set of challenges that came with college, right? Not only was I going to school, I was also having a part-time job on campus. And then I mentioned earlier, my parents were immigrants, but they were also undocumented. And for a long time, between high school through college, in Oregon, undocumented immigrants couldn't have a driver's license. So I was actually taking my siblings to school. My brother was at South, I believe, when I was like a senior in college. So I was supporting that. And then my sister helping her navigate the college process. So by the time I graduate college, I do feel like it was just like a family celebration of like we've overcome a set of challenges. They actually live in Mexico now, so they weren't able to come to my MBA graduation, but still they were able to, cheer me on from afar. So yeah, it's been really nice to have those different milestones, but I think I've also learned to also build a family and community of my own. So I think that's another aspect of being kind of like a first gen student is also finding that community that you can have support and be able to rely on.
yeah, well, congratulations on all that you've accomplished so far and continue to accomplish. I know that motivation is intrinsic and it's community built too. So as you move forward, we're excited to celebrate you and continue to shine the spotlight on all that you're doing. We're going to ask our big four questions as always. They are brought to us today by a partnership with our Saxon Success Fund. And for those who haven't heard yet what the Saxon Success Fund is, it's a nonprofit organization created by a former Saxon and led by former Saxons to transform South High as one of the very best schools in the state to one of the very best in our nation, especially through partnership in and through our alumni and our Saxon community. For anyone interested, more information, go to saxonsuccessfund.org. So these four big questions, really highlighting and looking into what you went through as a high school student, looking back and giving yourself former self advice if you could, and then things that you've learned. And question one is knowing where you are today and all that you are up to, what or who helped you get to this point? You talked about your family, you talked about some friends, anyone else that you want to spotlight as well?
Yeah, I mean, I want to give a shout out to all the teachers I had from when I would start preschool as at the age of 3 all the way through college. But I mean, specifically at South, I think the teachers I had for the IB program did a really excellent job in holding us accountable, having high expectations. And I think also encouraging this notion of like work-life balance before that kind of conversation was happening, especially like in the 2000 early 2000s. And so I knew that I was struggling for a minute with all the IB courses and having a teacher just say, like, you don't have to do all the classes, it's fine. And so then after that, I just focused on the topics I just found most interesting and I was most passionate about. So really shout out to teachers. You all are doing amazing work and there's a lot of students. And so it really means a lot when an educator takes the time to notice, right? You might be a little quieter, or, I think as an adult, you can kind of tell when something's on or something's happening. And so I think those little moments do have one of those like pivotal moments in a student's journey.
IB curriculum has been something that comes up in these conversations quite frequently. And South is set apart. We're one of two schools in the Salem Kaiser area that are known to be IB schools. From someone who's been through those classes and that curriculum to now someone who is seeing students go through them themselves and helping them through, what do you see as the value of an IB education, whether it's a single class, choose your own adventure type, or it's a full diploma? Speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's something to say about someone who's just willing to push themselves a little bit outside of their comfort zone. For some students, it might be a lot, depending on what the subject is. But I think just the willingness to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be asked to do a little bit more than you would typically be asked. So I think that's one area. The other, I think, um, the preparedness for college wasn't so much about the knowledge. Obviously, there's that aspect. I just felt like I was a little bit ahead. But I think what IB did for me was this ability to think more critically. And by the time I started college, I just had more tools to do that naturally instead of having to be guided as a first year student. And I would also say my writing skills were beyond other students that I knew that perhaps hadn't taken those honors classes, whether it was IB or AP. So I think it just inculcates a different sense of confidence in yourself because you know you've been challenged and the challenge is going to continue. It's just a matter of knowing that you have it in you to either push through a late night or push through a reading, or at least to be able to, on the spot, be able to ask questions because you know you might get called on. So I think there's all those little tools that set you up for college.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So let's look back at your high school years. If you could go back and talk to your former self, what's one piece of advice that you now know that you would give having looked back on those 4 years?
Yeah, I look back and I remember being more of an extroverted kid, and I don't know if it was just being a teenager or what happened in high school, that I definitely got more in my head and I wasn't as like active in participating in classes or using my voice. So I would have definitely just leaned into that sooner, embody more confidence. I think part of it is just honestly being a teenager and trying to figure out who you are and where you belong and who your crew is. But I think part of it is also just being able to push away from this fear of what will people think if I say this in class, or it's okay to have a different thought to somebody else and not overthink it. I think often we're waiting for validation from a teacher from our response or a class discussion. And I think being able to also push through this need for constant validation and just be able to say what you think openly, and validate yourself for even participating in the first place. So finding my voice, having the confidence, and I think in that line too is just trying new things. I think we also get stuck with our friend groups and we want to do what our friends are doing. And so having this earlier awareness of if I'm interested in this, I'm going to do it regardless if anyone else wants to or not. And so sort of having that sense of autonomy, and confidence that you're able to try things on your own.
Where do you think that confidence comes from for you? How was that built?
Yeah, I think there's smaller things, right? Like orchestra or choir, where sometimes you're just put on the spot to play or sing in front of everybody. But I think for me, it also came from the academy and having mentors
Mm.
and getting to know college students who shared my identity or background. And so, as a 12-year-old, 13, 14, 15, being able to see somebody who was where I wanted to be at some point and hear that they were also shy, I think just kind of helped reinforce this notion that I'm not the only person who's struggling with these things at that time. And it's something that I can practice, right? Like just participate, like try once. And I think that's something that we try to also do with current students, like make it your goal. Every fall, you have to email your teachers and introduce yourself and say some goals that you have for that class. For some other students, it's like, we need you to like talk to your teacher after school just for practice, right? Ask a question if you're struggling. So I think it's just those little exercises, to demonstrate yourself that you have the ability. And then once you do that, then you can start pushing to the next level.
I love that, and I love just the practicality of that advice. That's something a student can take right away and apply in a classroom. Even we're 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks into a class right now, they still have the opportunity to impact or identify their goals for that class and to make a connection with the teacher. That's not off the table. So thank you for giving that advice. We're going to pull that clip. We're going to put it in our advisory slides. Hopefully, every student gets to hear that and apply it right away. Similarly, question three is what's one thing you've learned since graduation that you wish you knew in high school?
Yeah, I think both learned and then constantly reinforced as I get older, is this notion of being well-rounded is really important. And I think the sooner I would have known that, I think again, connecting to the prior question, just trying things. I think sometimes we get stuck on college is my next goal, and that is really important. But what other aspects of my identity are not being developed, right? Like, what kind of books can I read? What activities can I engage in? What are just fun things that sound cool that I want to do? And the people that I meet in my day-to-day life that I enjoy talking to the most are those people who are well-rounded, right? They're reading different things, they're going to different events, they're able to have conversations. And so I think the importance of being well-rounded, being able to hold a conversation, ask interesting questions, keep things going, and then also just like the power of including people in that process. So I think, especially now, we live in this era where it's easy to just look at your phone. Even sometimes you go out to get lunch with somebody and everyone's just scrolling on their phone. And so being able to kind of be in the present, be mindful and say like, hey, let's, put our phones down, connect. If you notice somebody who's been excluded either at work or at school, just being able to say, hey, how's it going? Think that really goes a long way. And I think a lot of people and students are thirsty for that sense of community, but we're allowing these devices or other barriers get in the way of having that genuine connection.
I couldn't agree more. And part of being well-rounded is also having this growth mindset that you're always willing to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and be willing to grow in the ways that are needed. That brings us to question four, which is if you could transform South Salem High School, the South Salem version that you remember, at least in one way, how would you change or what would you add to our school to make it the place that you would want for your own experience or for those that you love most if they were Saxon students?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I had a really good experience academically, and I think South offered a lot of different ways for students to engage. And I think like even our music program alone was leaps from other schools in our area. So we're very lucky to have South, and the South that I experience is something that I feel like still exists today. But in thinking about this question, I was like, what would it look like to even have in-school conferences or kind of workshops where you say like, okay, maybe instead of having an assembly this month, everyone's going to sign up based on their interests. You have guest speakers, or maybe current students are showcasing their work. Just kind of have an opportunity to do some in-house learning and feature and highlight some current students. I think it'd been cool to engage in that way. Sometimes it's hard to do it in large groups, so maybe more of an advisory thing, just so that students can get a little bit exposed to things without having to leave school in ways that aren't necessarily like academic, right? So I think that's something that would have been neat to have. Advisory was great, but I think we wanted a little bit more interactions with the outside world and seeing how our education looks like outside of school and how does that apply into the real world.
I love that idea. I've seen that done at a couple other schools that I've been involved with. It's such a tangible, again, applicable way for students to either ask questions or see themselves in the speaker that's there or in the resource that's being offered, that they then can project forward, much like you shared in the beginning of your story of seeing like I have these goals and they're possible. They're attainable. I can make it here. I can do this. I can graduate this way. I can go to this program. So I love that, and I'm gonna chew on that. Figure out how we do that at South Salem. Thank you for that.
Yeah, let me know. I'm sure we
Yes.
can all start a committee or
Oh,
something.
absolutely. We're pulling you in for that. So just even even though you're at Willamette Academy, you're always a Saxon, which means we're bringing you back. Those are our four big questions, but I've got a few quick rapid fire ones. And you mentioned you love going to see lighthouses. You love visiting different coffee shops. I'm curious, especially knowing that you still live in the Salem area, work in the Salem area. What's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite coffee shop to hit up? Where do you like to go in the Salem area?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Thai Orchid has been a constant, and it was also nearby when I was in college at Willamette. Uh, Bakery right now, Mana, Coffee House, Ike Box. I wish Mana Bakery was open every day, including Sundays. Um, so yeah, I think for sure Ike Box. I have a lot of good memories there. I feel like I did a lot of homework or work meetings, so it's a go-to.
Icebox has come up several times on these interviews, so shout out again. We got to get a full sponsorship
Yep.
from Isaacs and Icebox too. So that's great. Hey, what was your favorite college class?
Ooh. Oh, this is hard because I was a sociology major and I could say all my classes, but I'm going to say I took a sociology class about families and structures within a family. So I would say that was my favorite.
Now, was it what made it your favorite? Was it the professor? Was it the content? The applicability to your own family? What was it for you?
I would say it was a little bit of everything. We read a really interesting book and it followed students and children over the course of years. And then the professor was just really neat and passionate about the topic. So that made it worthwhile.
Love that. Favorite place you've traveled?
Mexico for sure, specifically Cancun. It's always tropical there, so no complaints.
Better weather, I'm sure, today there than it is here in Salem. It's a rainy Tuesday here in Salem. How about favorite TV show, movie, book, anything like that?
Parks and Rec, I
Yes.
love. I'm also a millennial, obviously, so the Lizzie McGuire series, the
Yes.
Disney original movies, Smart House, Johnny Tsunami, all of those. Harry Potter.
Excellent. Any shout outs that you want to give, whether it's to former Saxons, anyone else that might be listening, tuning in, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, shout outs. I specifically remember Mr. Chamberlain, Mr. Britton from my IB program. So I don't know if they're still around, but I really love
Britton
their
is
classes.
Chamberlain has retired. Mr. Britton is
Okay.
teaching, probably just finished teaching a TOK class right now.
Awesome. Yeah, and then Mr. Takara. He actually was my math teacher in middle school and then moved to South when I became a high schooler. So I never had him, but he always helped me with math after school. So shout out to him too.
All right, we'll make sure that they get those messages. Anything else you want to share? Any part of your story that would be important for someone listening to hear or that we could share with our students?
Yeah, I mean, in the spirit of this series, I think, just like keep going to all the students, right? High school goes by fast, but also it is Hispanic Heritage Month. So for all the students who identify as that, I mean, you're making a difference, right? You're contributing to community in some way. And I think even though we might not know you, there's a lot of people who are rooting for you and your success.
Yeah, I noticed you mentioned that too in the conversation today, and also in some of the survey responses you gave, was just that the importance of identity and having a community surrounding you. Talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me at South, like in my IB courses, I was maybe like one of two Latino students. So there was kind of like a dissonance, right? Like I didn't see myself necessarily reflected in the curriculum. And then there weren't a lot of people who looked like me in class. So then you start to just get in your head of like, do I belong here? Or am I the exception? So I think there's that side of identity exploration, and sometimes that continues in college too, just given the demographics. But I think regardless too of identity, whether that's class or gender, just being able to connect with different students who share different values or similar values, I think really kind of grounds you in a purpose, or at least being able to say, like, I also experienced this. What about you? And how do you navigate that? So I think given how identity manifests in society, it's also important to kind of get that validation of you're not alone or the things you're experiencing aren't off grid, right?
Absolutely. And Delia, I can't thank you enough for being that for our students, that this series and really just our alumni spotlights across the entire year will be that's why we created this, was to give students an opportunity to look at someone and say, oh, I connect with that part of their story, or I can see myself doing that, or hey, there's someone that I can aspire to be like. And we just can't thank you enough for being that for our students, for our community, for those that you're serving through Willamette Academy, and just being a valuable community member here in Salem. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you for your time today on a Tuesday afternoon. So grateful to connect with you and hear a bit of your story.
No, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Well, that wraps up another incredible conversation. Thank you so much to Delia for joining us on this interview. And thank you so much to all who have tuned in today and continue to tune in and support our South Salem High School efforts. We want to thank you especially for this great celebration of all of our alumni and current students in Hispanic Heritage Month. We will continue those celebrations throughout the year as we weave in stories and weave in opportunities to promote what we have going on here at South and what we have going on across this great world from all of our alumni. Thanks again. We appreciate you. Thanks again to the Saxon Success Fund. Tune in next time.